Good afternoon, everyone. I must say what an incredible opportunity it is to be presenting my work to you all today. As mentioned, I am a scholar in the humanities, which means that I spend most of my days explaining my job prospects to random strangers who frequently ask, well, what are you going to do with that? It's like I say humanities, and somehow they hear unemployment. But being part of the humanities means that my work takes a very different approach than the STEM-based research we're often used to seeing when dealing with issues pertaining to climate and health. Part of what we do in the humanities is we find the meaning of things, and we conceptualize that meaning for people to understand and interpret. I like to think of us as fancy probiotics, except we help you digest your information, not your food. One of the ways we help you digest that information is through narratives. Some popular narratives you may all be familiar with include Rosie the Riveter, an iconic piece of art that highlighted and changed the way we view women in the workplace. Or The Diary of Anne Frank, a revolutionary novel that chronicled the experiences of what it meant hiding in Nazi Germany. And even the Statue of Liberty, a universal symbol of freedom and hope, especially to many immigrant communities. See, I believe that narratives are quintessential to the zeitgeist of any era. However, as some of us may know, this work is often seen as superficial or unimportant, especially within academic spaces. The narrative approach I take today explores the paradox of how we treat Mother Nature as parallel to how we treat our immigrant mothers. We need and abuse them. They're essential, yet they're invisible. So, not too far from the fringe of the tough stuff in academic rigor, the humanities lens that I take today promotes an understanding that leads to empathy. Empathy for our mothers, empathy for our immigrant communities, and empathy for our planet, providing a new perspective on some familiar topics. See, growing up, giving a TED Talk was always one of my biggest dreams, and although my hard work and merit have definitely got me to the finish line, I would be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity to give praise and thanks to the incredible human whose own personal sacrifice and dedication has allowed me to simply stand on those starting blocks. And that human is my incredible, beautiful, and gracious mother. And my mom's not just any mom, she's an immigrant mom, a title that often bears a weight too heavy for many to handle. Born in Trinidad, my mom was an aspiring nurse and poetic writer. Young, passionate, and full of ambition, her opportunities were stripped from her when entering motherhood, with the addition of my sister and self. Once immigrating to America, she sacrificed her dreams, the comfort of her home, and the support of the community and family that she had. Immigrating with the mindset of achieving a greater and brighter opportunity for her children. Traveling the 1,000-mile journey to the States, surrounded by strangers, going through the complexities of a tough airport, and doing it all while comforting her tired and hungry children. My mom took on the journey because she believed that this country would offer us better opportunities. When she first immigrated here, she took on remedial jobs like house cleaning, jobs that I often saw drain her of her self-esteem and her energy. But she still prevailed, and she did it for us. Now that I've grown up, I've definitely come to appreciate and understand all her sacrifices and what she did for us. However, this wasn't always the case. When I was a child, I was sometimes unappreciative. I'll give you an example. When I was 7 years old, the new Transformers movie had just come out, and as Bumblebee's best friend at the time, and maybe even now, it was super important to me that I went and saw this movie. So much so that I threw a little bit of a tantrum, begging my mom to take me to go. My mom, wanting to be a good mother, ended up sacrificing grocery money in order to take us. And as we know, for low-income folks, going to the grocery oftentimes means contemplating which organ you could live without. And at the time, I didn't really understand what this cost her, what this would cost our family, but I was still appreciative. See, this experience taught me two things. It taught me the plight of motherhood, but the unique plight of immigrant motherhood. For many immigrants, specifically immigrant women, immigrating increases social and political vulnerabilities. For immigrant women, they experience altered gender role dynamics, lack of stable housing, high rates of abuse, proficiency challenges in English, and lack of adequate social services support. Many of these things were issues that I saw my mom go through. However, my mom still had this ability to hold the family together, all while still providing for society and communities as a whole. Now, this is important because the top 5 industries that immigrant women occupy include healthcare services and social assistance, accommodation and food care, educational services, retail trade, and manufacturing. Immigrant women are all around us. They're the people who take care of us. They're essential to our lives. So how does this connect to Mother Nature? Well, Mother Nature provides everything we need in order to nourish and thrive. However, we take her generosity for granted, abusing her, much like spoiled children. So the Central Valley is pretty cool in that it allows us to understand the paradox of how we simultaneously need and abuse our moms. Here in the Central Valley, as mentioned before, it's the 7th largest agricultural producer in the US, producing over 250 crops, bringing in $17 billion per year. Here we can just see that Mother Nature is a bountiful provider. Also within the Central Valley, 1.5 million foreign-born people reside here, many of them making up the 48% of field workers in the Central Valley. However, a lot of them do not have access to healthcare, although being exposed to toxic chemicals and hazardous work conditions. Many of them also experience lack of transportation, long work hours, economic constraints, and educational and language barriers. However, they still come day after day, working low-wage jobs and providing the food that we take care of. So, how might we leverage the parallel between Mother Nature and immigrant mothers to resolve the cycle of abuse and neglect? Well, I take an interdisciplinary approach that draws from indigenous methodologies and feminist theory to examine this topic. And I know to some of you that may sound familiar, and to others that just may sound like the next thing Ron DeSantis is going to ban in Florida. So, I read this book by Jacqueline Rose, and it's called A Mother's an Essay on Love and Cruelty. And within this book, she mentions how oftentimes mothers are this place in our culture where we bury the reality of our own conflicts. Oftentimes we lash out on our moms. For me personally, as I've grown older, I could think of all the times that I got angry at my mom. But the things that I got mad at her for were things that I wouldn't get mad with my friends with, or even my dad. But as Jacqueline Rose has explained, motherhood is that place where we often feel like we can use mom as a scapegoat for our own personal and political failings. For immigrant mothers, it's unique because they're both the object of licensed idealization and cruelty. We don't see them, we don't hear their experiences, but most importantly, we don't believe their experiences. And when we don't believe their experiences, that closes off the portals to our hearts. See, Mother Nature's and immigrant mothers are both called caretakers, right? They operate as an endless resource, ready to sacrifice their personal well-being for a greater good. And this sounds great, but this type of discourse is very dangerous. Immigrants, especially immigrant mothers and immigrant women, are more likely to experience undiagnosed depression and depressive symptoms. Immigrant women being at increased risk for depression both prenatally and postnatally, with postnatal depression affecting up to 42% of immigrant women, compared to only the 10 to 15% of native-born women. And much like immigrant women, we have literally caused our planet to enter a state of depression, seen through climate change, intense droughts, water scarcity, severe fires, and rising sea levels, flooding, and even melting polar ice caps. So how might we treat Mother Earth's depression? Well, I believe that drawing from indigenous epistemologies, we can recenter the way we think about mothers. In indigenous culture, they believe that mothers are powerful and beautiful because they're the givers of sacred life. It's that innate energy that they carry within them. That's why they revere mothers, they honor them, putting them on mantles and pedestals. They also believe that women are the keepers of culture and collective memory. Without them, we can't pass down tradition. We can't emote, we can't feel or communicate. Because they have such a high reverence for mothers, they denounce capitalism as a system that forces both Mother Nature and Mother Earth to sacrifice to the point of extinction. An example of how we can see this is in the popular Shel Silverstein's book, The Giving Tree. In this story, we see a little boy who takes and takes and takes from this very giving tree until the tree goes extinct. However, in a parody by Topher Payne, we can see how an alternative ending can make us consider how we need to set boundaries and have restraint in order to take care of our planet. As he writes, "But then she would not have had nothing left, not for herself nor anyone else, and there never would have been a home for the red squirrels. There had been no hide and seek with the boy's grandchildren, no bakery with the best apple pies anyone had ever tasted. Setting healthy boundaries is a very important part of giving. It assures you'll always have something left to give." And so the tree was happy. Everyone was. We need to recognize the invisibility and mistreatment of our mothers. By using these epistemologies from indigenous cultures, we can do that. And this work is already happening within our government today, as the White House is using indigenous knowledge for guidance when creating laws. So, I lead off by telling this story. I went on a trip with my friends and they were joining on me a little bit because I am admittedly that type of person who carries like a first aid kit, Tylenol, ginger ale, like the whole 9 yards of protection. Seriously, y'all would have thought we were like going into the next season of The Walking Dead. We were really going to Sacramento. But this moment, it really stuck out to me because, as my friends will tell you, I am definitely that type of person that if they're in pain, if they're struggling, I'm always like quick on my feet with coming up with a solution. And I find that this innate ability to care for people really comes from the foundation that my mom set. So, like I mentioned earlier, my mom was really wanting to be a nurse when she was back in Trinidad, but as immigrating to America, she kind of had to give up that dream and take on more remedial and dehumanizing jobs. But my mom had a secret superpower. She could improvise with the resources that she had at hand, which meant that because we didn't have healthcare and it was really expensive, she always kept over-the-counter medicine, she learned how to bandage wounds, and she kept plants like aloe vera to make therapeutics. And my mom was just that type of person. She cared and she knew what to do. She relied on home remedies. But what I want to achieve today and focus on is her invisible healing. Just to have her presence there was so healing in of itself because she provided a sense of safety in the places that were not always safe. She provided a sense of safety in the places that weren't safe. And I just want us to take a moment to transport ourselves to that feeling of safety in the context of mom, or whoever mom represents to you, either a teacher, a coworker, a friend, whomever. And I just wanted to sit in that almost divine feminine energy that's inherently healing, emotionally attuned, and is vulnerable. And I want us to think about Mother Nature in the context of mom and all that she provides for us. And like Jacqueline Rose says, examine the ways in which we often take our moms for granted or lash out on her. For me, I think about the times that when I'm sick, I don't always represent the best version of myself. When I used to lash out on my mom. Or even on this trip with my friends, I sat in the car thinking, wow, I get to see the places my mom will never get to see, all because of the sacrifices that she made for myself. And as we sit there and we challenge ourselves to think about this, we often realize that children believe that this fund is infinite, right? But the reality is that we're depleting these resources faster than they can replenish from both our mothers. And I want us to think about immigrant moms, right? Because there are school teachers, there are nurses, there are farm workers. And it took me growing up to realize the invisible services that both they and Mother Nature provide for us. And I just want to say that it's time for us to grow up. It's time for us to see the planet the way we see our moms. In order to have empathy for the planet, we need to have empathy for our mothers. It is foundational. And if we don't have that empathy, then how can we have it for our planet as a whole? And I represent that by saying today, Mom, I see you, I recognize your sacrifices, and I carry forward your unappreciated achievements with the determination to make visible all that you give and you provide. See, this is how we need to encapsulate the way we think about our planet and the way we treat our planet. Thank you all. My name is Josiah Beharry again. It's been an honor.